Our meditation this morning is related to our first principle, our third principle, and our fourth principle. It's called I Believe in Fathering by Evan Carville-Zeimer. I believe in fathering. I believe in the radical idea that men have the full human capacity to nurture. Hair bows and baseballs, cooking and creativity, tools and tiaras, camping and dancing, snuggles and shrieks of delight. Too many fathers don't believe in their own fathering. Too many are scarred by their own fathers to hear their heart say otherwise. Too many have known fathers who, faced with a quivering lip and tears, could only say, "Man up." Too many have known fathers who knew only yelling and hitting. Too many have known fathers who lost sight of their sacred role of protector and became tormentor. But I believe in fathering. When a human being gestates and gives birth, their brain changes permanently. A father's brain changes too. Changes as he rocks his baby to sleep, delights in baby games, and soothes bumps and bruises. A father earns his new neurobiology. In a world where too many mothers hand their co-parent directions more specific than those given to the babysitter, where a father out with his kids is asked, "Are you babysitting?" and "Where's mom?" Where fathers are the punchline, I believe in fathering. I believe in the radical idea that men have the full human capacity to nurture. Whether their children come through birth, adoption, fostering, through scouts, sports, Sunday school, or youth group. I've known too many gay dads, too many single fathers, too many men raising children others couldn't to believe otherwise. I believe we all, especially our children, deserve to know that the human capacity to nurture belongs to every one of us. I believe in fathering. Our reading today comes from a book called Raising Good Humans by Hunter Clark Fields. It's from chapter 6, called Saying the Right Things. Children are by definition immature. We can expect that they will inevitably annoy, disturb, and frustrate us. Kids can be thoughtless, messy, and destructive. Not out of malice, but simply by going about meeting their own needs. When their behavior interferes with our needs, we must find ways to communicate that do not cause resentment and resistance. That way we can keep our connection, and therefore our influence, strong for the long run. Slight aside here. As I read this and thought about my experience as both a son and a father, I thought to myself, that sounds easier said than done. So back to the author. The good news is that since language and habits of speaking are learned, they can be unlearned. Waking up to the fact that our habitual ways and patterns are ineffective is an essential step in interrupting those old patterns and creating new, more effective habits of speech. Please do not blame and shame yourself for speaking unskillfully. Instead, celebrate your new awareness as the start of a new pattern of mindful communication with your child. Another aside, I'd also add with your father, mother, or parent-like figures, thinking about who's parenting and being parented. Back to the author. We can't put up the walls of a house without a foundation. Our intentions form the foundation of our communications. To shift our language, we have to shift our intention. Let's be real. In our interactions with our kids, we're usually trying to manipulate them, to make them do something. We need to change our way of thinking, from changing the others to expressing our own unmet needs. And I, Ryan, say, thank goodness she ends with, it's about progress, not perfection. So for the children's message today, I wanted to focus on a book that I grew up with, and Christine and I have read a couple of times with our girls, with Anna and Lillian. In our house, it largely goes by the name El Árbol Generoso. Many might also know it as the Giving Tree. And I was thinking about this book this week, and the idea of giving and taking. And so I might use my own children for a quick minute here as guinea pigs. One of them looks super excited, one of them not so much. For those who know them, I'll let you guess which is which. So I want you guys to think, and anybody else who's listening, because we're all kids in some way, and there might be children or young adults who are listening online as well, but do we give more than we have? Do we take more than we should? And I'm thinking about that because in the book, if we remember, I'm not going to read it all right now, the boy takes a lot from the tree. The tree also gives a lot. In some ways, the tree gives even more than it has. And in some ways, the boy takes even more than the tree has. And for seemingly good reasons, right? The tree wants the boy to be happy, the boy wants to be happy, the boy has needs. But in the end, at least visually, the tree doesn't have a whole lot, and the boy doesn't necessarily end up that happy. So it made me wonder, as children, as sons, daughters, as anywhere in the middle, as parents, how do we give? What do we give? And in any of those roles, what do we take and how much do we take? So those are some of the things that I worry about as a son and a dad or a papi. And I don't think that there's a one right answer or one wrong answer, but I do think it's worth thinking about, especially since, as you use, we commit to our 7 principles, many of which focus on treating others and ourselves with respect. I'm going to move into the message this morning. Up to now, my wish was that I'd be able to express a variety of perspectives around fathers, fathering, experiences. And so this one is my experience. I can't claim it to be anybody else's, but it is my own. So I was recently watching a Big Bang Theory episode where 2 of the main characters were lamenting the absence or neglect of their fathers, trying to determine how, if at all, they contributed to their success as scientists. And a 3rd character, who'd experienced a privileged childhood, kept trying to compare his experiences with those of the first 2 characters. But it didn't go so well since his childhood complaints were extremely trivial. In defeat, he finally exclaimed that it wasn't his fault that his father was always there. I know that I have been lucky. I've made friends and acquaintances with lots of people who have had varying experiences with their fathers. And I've always had my father present in my life. And like Raj from Big Bang Theory, he's always supported me. He stayed home with me, not just because mom needed to work, but because he loved it. He took my brothers and me to the diner every single Saturday for who knows how many years. He left work early to attend all of my home sporting events. When I was younger, he attended all of my baseball games. He hates baseball. I also now see the sacrifice of this as a parent who doesn't always want to do everything his daughters do. My dad pushed me to be a leader, to try new things, to continue my education. I didn't really like the pushing, but I must admit that it contributed to who I am today and to what I've achieved. Where our story gets a little tricky is during these years of my adulthood, now that we both have jobs, real responsibilities, are fathers, and think differently. I don't love him any less, although I know it's absolutely come across that way in the past 10 years or so. In fact, I was recently thinking that he and I should take the love languages test, of which he is so fond. After all, he is a psychotherapist. When I was growing up, my dad wrote letters on important occasions. I still have some of them in a box of special things. I was recently sifting through some of the contents of one of those boxes and came across a letter. It brought up lots of memories and different emotions. This is important because for a while now, he and I have been struggling to understand and define our relationship as adults. So to communicate with him in a familiar modality, to make myself vulnerable, and perhaps to do some of this publicly to receive feedback from multiple perspectives, I've decided to write 2 letters, one to him and one to my daughters, to express my feelings and experiences both as a son and as a father. The letter to my dad's written in English, since we only use English to communicate, and the letter to my daughters is written in Spanish, since I generally use Spanish with them. So throughout these letters, I encourage you to find points of progress, not perfection, as well as connections to any of our 7 principles, which the first 4 might be on the screen at this point. Because for me, writing these letters was an exercise in my commitment, particularly to the first, second, third, and fourth principles that we have as you use. Here goes. Dear Dad, I love you. I'm grateful for the lessons you have taught me, the support you have provided me, the concern you have for my well-being, and the presence you continue to embody for me and for my family. I truly mean all of that. And I wonder if I'm not showing it in ways that resonate with you. And to be honest, I'm struggling more than anything because in this process of becoming, a process that seems to be wrought with paradoxes, it's hard. Let me try to explain. You've taught me to be a leader, have high expectations, be brave and try new things, respect family, respect myself, enact equality of gender roles, express my feelings, and care for what's important. I took these very seriously because you also taught me to be a perfectionist. But now I'm at the point of wondering how to do these things imperfectly. And it's hard. I don't feel like I have everyone's approval. And I mess up a lot when I do the things. Let me try to explain some more. And these paradoxes do not mean that anything is your fault. Rather, there are ways that I am struggling and want to communicate with you. So you taught me to be a leader. I'm a professor. I have leadership roles in various organizations. I enjoy those roles. I'm constantly trying to get better. But I feel tired. I feel overextended. I take on so many roles that I get taken away from family, feel overly stressed, and often get my validation externally. You taught me to have high expectations. I value loyalty, accountability, perfection of self and others. But I'm easily disappointed by both myself and others. I'm working really hard to give myself and others leeway. It doesn't feel good because I'm learning, but it also doesn't feel good when I get pushback from family. You taught me to be brave, to try new things. I'm an introvert, through and through. But still, in my junior year of college, I moved to Spain. And then after college, I moved without knowing anybody to the Rio Grande Valley of Texas. You taught me to respect family. Just a repetition. These are good things. These are just my struggles with them. Taught me to call, to check in, to support unconditionally, to spend time together, to engage in children's activities for the children's sake, not your or my own. Now, though, I feel like I have 3 families. The one I grew up in, the one with Christine and the girls, and the Hughes. I want everyone to be happy and get along. For the most part, we do. But everyone's different. Adjusting to those differences, like being on time and how we react to mistakes like spilt milk or flaming hamburgers, was extremely difficult for me. I'm a people pleaser. It turns out I can't please everyone. It's been a hard lesson. And I feel like I fail most when I'm around you, Mom, and my Miami family. You taught me to respect myself, to exercise, to eat healthily, to engage in fun habits. But I find myself feeling badly about not exercising with you when you invite me, like I should and I should want to. But if I exercise, I like to do it alone. You taught me to enact equality of gender roles: cooking, cleaning, child rearing, fixing things, lawn and yard care. Now, there's nothing wrong with that lesson at all. But sometimes I feel like you and Mom think I do too much at home, and that's a difficult tension for me to reconcile. You taught me to express my feelings, that feelings are normal, to tell others how I feel, to begin with I. When I started to do this as an adult, I received a lot of pushback. I was accused of not loving or liking you, but I'm just learning to express my feelings and to take care of myself. You taught me to care for what's important. People, relationships, sometimes some material things like cars. But we value things differently. That's okay. I want my material values to be the same as yours, but they're not always. I do think that we have similar moral values, and I'm grateful for that. But I also think that we enact those values differently. So as I write these thoughts, I can see how my love may not have shown through. I'm sorry for that. My intention was never to be unloving. I'm still becoming. And I'm open to part of that becoming being a way that works for you. You recently told me that you were proud of me. Not the text last night or this morning, but a little while back. Although I don't doubt that, I don't always feel that message. You've said that you brag to friends, but I don't always hear that. I want to hear that. Perhaps we're somehow having similar experiences. That is, that we care for and love each other, but need to recalibrate our ways of showing. And I know we will. And I hope that this is part of the process. Let's talk soon. So in reflecting on this letter, I realized that my dad, along with a host of other people, taught me to be a UU. Just think about our 7 principles. And here, especially the first 4. Right? So with the first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person, sometimes I become frustrated with my dad because he's still pushing me to see the inherent worth and dignity of people that I don't want to have anything to do with. I've been asking a lot lately how he can maintain friendships with conservatives who have values that do not align with his own. He provides suggestions, questions, and anecdotes for me to help. For the second principle, justice, equity, and compassion, I remember my mom telling me how gracefully my dad handled an ongoing situation with a former coworker. My dad had sold the company and was continually being berated by someone he had previously been a partner with. But rather than engage hostilely, my dad contextualized the situation, telling us that we would likely also feel angered if we were told that our jobs would be changing. All I can remember is feeling rage for someone who would disrespect my father. I remember a very long stretch of time where a friend of my father's lied to him. This is a second instance. Basically stole from him and then wouldn't even take his calls. My mom, my brothers, and I were ready to hurl insults and go knocking on the friend's door. But Dad had compassion. He seemed to have this faith that it would work out in the end. And when it did, at least financially, he didn't seem to harbor awful feelings. I am still working on mine, and it didn't even happen to me. For the third principle, acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth, I've realized that Dad indulged me in my spiritual growth. Apparently, this is the way the story goes, while attending Boston College for undergrad and after taking a course on the Old Testament, I returned home to inform my parents that the Bible was bullshit because men, real people, had written it and done so according to their wildly subjective experiences. Dad didn't get upset. I think he might have laughed. He asked questions and let me think. He still hasn't pressured me into any religious sect or practices. Rather, through all his ways of supporting me and driving me a little bit crazy, I think he supports my continuous spiritual growth. And for the fourth principle, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, Dad took on the spiritual world in a way that surprised most of us. He started practicing with a medium. He became in tune with his senses in a way that he had never been, or at least expressed, before. There's a lot more to this story, but I just remember quietly marveling at the way that he saw the connections between what could be different worlds, and from a non-Christian perspective. I think of these experiences and the lessons I've learned, and the lessons that I still have to learn. It makes me think of my role as a father to my daughters. I'm simultaneously excited and terrified. Hopefully this comes out in my letter to Anna and Lillian. After service, I'm happy to provide the English if you'd like it. Mis queridas hijas, recuerdo perfectamente los momentos cuando mami y yo nos dimos cuenta de que mami estaba embarazada y cuando cada una de ustedes nació. Desde el momento que nacieron, eran fuertes, inteligentes, graciosas, guapísimas y perfectamente imperfectas. Sentí tanto orgullo, un orgullo que todavía tengo. También sentí miedo. Yo sabía que no iba a poder protegerla siempre, que habría muchos momentos que tendría que soltarlas y tener fe que serían personas cariñosas y capaces. También tengo miedo porque me he dado cuenta de que mi papá no es perfecto y sé que ustedes van a darse cuenta de que tampoco lo soy. Siempre hago lo mejor que puedo, pero a veces fracaso. Right? Sometimes I fail. A veces grito, a veces echo culpa a la hermana equivocada, a veces insisto en que se acuesten en vez de pasar más tiempo con ustedes. Pero las quiero muchísimo y siempre las querré. Es por eso que cuando me besan, cuando me abrazan, cuando se sientan al lado mío, cuando me cogen la mano, cuando me dicen que me quieren y que I want to marry Cyrus because he's nice like papi, que me parece que he tenido éxito. Ustedes me han enseñado a bailar para sentirme bien, burlarme de mí mismo, a ver que lo que parece imposible, sí, es posible. Me han enseñado que pueden ser igual como yo, portarse exactamente como yo creía que iban a portarse, pero también que no tienen que ser igual como yo o portarse exactamente como creía que iban a portarse. Y sobre todo, me han enseñado a amar sin condiciones. Es decir, puedo estar enojado con ustedes y todavía las quiero. Ustedes pueden equivocar o hacer errores y todavía las quiero. Ustedes pueden no hacerme caso y todavía las quiero. Ustedes pueden asustarme y todavía las quiero. Ustedes pueden decirme palabras feas y todavía las quiero. Prometo que siempre las querré. Voy a fallar. Ustedes van a fallar. Voy a tener éxito. Ustedes van a tener éxito. Está bien. Lo que espero es que siempre sigamos hablando y creciendo juntos. O sea, caminando en estos principios de Yuyu. Prometo tratar de fomentarlos tanto a ustedes como Grandpa hizo conmigo. So now I ask you, what role, if any, did father-like figures or any parental figure play in your road to Yuyuism? In what ways have those in your life exemplified our 7 principles? And in what ways have you been a good steward of those principles? For me, both fathering and being fathered have played a large role.